So I'm sure at this point, everyone has seen or at least heard of that there is finally, after well over a decade, a Five Nights at Freddy's movie. Now, at the minute, the reviews are a little bit skewed. It's one of those bizarre situations where the reviewers, the critics, absolutely despise the film, think it is complete unwatchable slop, just full of pointless cameos like Corey Kenshin and Matt Pat, and both of them are actually in the film, by the way. But on the other hand, the majority of people that saw the film, they think it was pretty decent. I mean, at the worst, it's probably just mid. Now, I, for one, am absolutely amazed that it took so long for the Five Nights at Freddy's film to even get made in the first place. I remember when I was younger, there was like a Five Nights at Freddy's film in the works for years and years, kind of went a little bit quiet, and then even at one point there was meant to be like a Minecraft film. Still haven't heard anything about that. Now, I have to open up about something traumatic, something very embarrassing that will definitely be used against me by my community. Five Nights at Freddy's holds a place near and dear to my heart, because if you didn't know, the little TV mascot character I've got, originally that character was meant to be Foxy the Pirate from Five Nights at Freddy's. And I sound like the biggest fake fan in the world right now, because despite having the character as Foxy for years and years, and then it just became like a TV head guy, I guess, to move away from the furry space, I have actually never played a Five Nights at Freddy's game in my entire life. Not even for a second. It's not like I booted up the first game, got a little bit scared, and then closed the game. I have never touched a Five Nights at Freddy's game in my entire life. The only one I have actually played is the more recent one, Security Breach, which is like the only one in the series that isn't like a point-and-click game. But even then, I played it for about like 20 minutes, and then I never touched it again. So despite me having such a relation to FNAF, I've never played the games. I don't enjoy them, and I feel like if I played them, I'd be terrified, because if you go on the main channel, the Parasitical channel, I cover loads of, different games. A lot of them is kind of all in their head horror game. But the thing is, I don't like horror games. They terrify me. That's why I like games where you can actually fight back. There's some kind of action, because you feel like you're actually doing something, as opposed to, there's a JPEG on the screen. There's a JPEG on the screen and it's scary. Oh my God. This is a tangent going off a tangent, but I remember as a kid, I would play so many of these like point and click games, like, that ran on Java and stuff, like the browser games that you basically can't play anymore. And one of these games was a Scooby-Doo game. And you think of Scooby-Doo, you think, I mean, that's a kid's show. I mean, there's monsters, there's ghouls, there's zombies, but usually it's just a guy wearing a mask, apart from that one zombie film where they actually were zombies. But that being said, there was a browser game made off the Scooby-Doo franchise, and it was like a point-and-click game. You get a bunch of items, collectibles, you escape the room, and from what I remember, you were stuck in this like Egyptian museum, and at the very beginning of the game, there was a coffin. And if you open the coffin, keep in mind what I'm about to say, this was a game made for children. Once you open the coffin, there'd be a little note that gets scrawled on the side saying, "Get out." And then the most terrifying jump scare would ever appear with the loudest audio stinger. I'm not going to play the actual thing because I don't want to traumatize you guys, but I'll show a still image here on screen. Imagine being like an 8-year-old child and that appears on the screen with like the loudest jump scare imaginable. And you know the worst thing is about that browser game? Opening that coffin, that sarcophagus, it doesn't do anything. There's no items in there you need. There's no code. Like, it is completely optional, but it is basically the first thing that gets your attention once you click on it. It's messed up. It is horrible. And I'm sure that there'll be some people watching this video that have now had like a PTSD memory unlocked thinking, oh my God, I remember that now. I remember being traumatized. And I genuinely think myself, like seeing that so young as a child, I now hate jump scares even more because it recalls back to that original memory. But anyways, back on track. So as we know, Five Nights at Freddy's, incredibly successful franchise. But the funny thing is, it didn't actually pick up traction until, all the YouTubers played it. Like, for example, Markiplier, PewDiePie, Jacksepticeye, because at the time, people just saw it as another, point and click jump scare JPEG horror game. So Five Nights at Freddy's 1, you're in the pizzeria. Five Nights at Freddy's 2, you're in a larger pizzeria. Five Nights at Freddy's 3 was pretty much the same thing, except there was a green filter everywhere, and now there were like ghosts that could attack you. And then in Five Nights at Freddy's 4, everything changed because instead of being in a pizzeria, it was a bedroom. And it was at this point that the YouTuber that I'm pretty sure you've all heard of, Matt Pat, was doing game theories constantly. And because there was such little lore to work with, which is basically like a Dark Souls item description, he would milk this thing for all it's worth. I am very sure that Matt Pat recently just bought his 5th LA mansion solely off the FNAF lore theory videos. Like, for example, after Five Nights at Freddy's 4, there was Five Nights at Freddy's 5 sister location. And this is when the lore became very bizarre. Now, MatPat, as we know, the game theory man, him and his writers, they come up with the most bizarre theories. I even remember at one point, his game theories became so popular that you basically had companies begging him to do game theories because they knew it was free promotion. I'm not sure if you've seen this viral tweet from the creator of Hello Neighbor, a very popular game that MatPat also did a game theory on. And in this tweet, it is just sad to read because they are basically begging him to do a theory because they know it's going to be more sales. And then the games got even more weird. For example, Five Nights at Freddy's 6, where you were just like doing orders and making your own pizzeria. There was a huge drift away from just traditional jump scares. But now, as we all know too well, the Five Nights at Freddy's film is finally upon us. Among us. Now, to say the expectations for this film were low, that is putting it mildly. First of all, I want to say that this was a Blumhouse production. If you don't know who Blumhouse is, it's basically a group of people that put a lot of money into very cheap, easy-to-make horror films because they see insane profit margins. Because unfortunately, as much as people complain and say, oh, horror films are so saturated, bro, they're all the same, it's all just jump scares, they do make a lot of money. People go to the cinema and then sit there uncomfortably for an hour and a half. Now, I know I said at the start of the video, I'm a massive coward. That is true. And that is one of the reasons why I refuse to see horror films inside a cinema. I think the last horror film I saw was Smile. You know, the film where they smile like this, and that's the entire bit. The worst thing is, I hate about horror films is, you know there's a jump scare coming. All the music cuts off, everything goes silent, and I'm not joking you, I will sit there in the cinema putting my fingers in my ears, and then I get self-conscious because I feel like I'm going to have someone watching me put my fingers in my ears, being like, what's wrong with that guy? Is he acoustic? And obviously, apart from the Blumhouse stamp of approval, the film was rated PG-13, which means there's basically going to be no actual gore or any kind of bodily horror, which is fine. You can have films that, you know, tell a lot more than they show. For example, you know, the scariest things are what you make up in your head. But when you know that the FNAF franchise is big anthropomorphic furry robot things, I think like the spirits of children inside them, it's pretty hard to actually communicate how horrific that is without showing anything. Now, I remember when the film dropped, I think it had like a 7.7 on IMDb, but the problem is with film reviews, when they first come out, they're usually very, very overinflated. Now, I'm not usually one to complain about inflation, but reviews, when they first come out, they're usually not that great because you'll basically have a bunch of fanboys that go and see the film, and then, you know, when the actual mass population, the horde goes to watch it, then the number tends to go down. So FNAF was on about a 7.7, which for a horror film, a Blumhouse horror film, that's really, really good. But now I think it's dropped down to like a 6.1, which makes it a pretty mediocre horror film. I'm looking at the reviews as well. IGN gave it a 4, but again, I really don't trust IGN's word on anything. They basically give any upcoming game release a 10 for the fear of backlash. One IGN take that was so bad that stays rent-free in my head to this day was when one of them was playing The Last of Us Remastered, when the game jumped from 30 FPS to 60 FPS, and then, like, the reviewer said it felt better in 30 FPS because it was more cinematic.
Interestingly, some people here at IGN do prefer the 30 frame setting, however.
These are probably the same people that will play the Nintendo Switch at 5 FPS and call it a cinematic experience. But the worst thing happened, guys. The reviewers said it was bad. Some of the fans said it was mid. But then Jacksepticeye, one of the people to carry the FNAF franchise on his back, said that he saw the film and he didn't like it. Now that is traumatic. That is a national tragedy. Personally, I think he's just a little bit salty because MatPat appeared in the film and Corey Kenshin appeared in the film and he didn't. But that's just my personal opinion. Now, the outpour and reception of the FNAF film for the general public has been pretty mixed, but with the fan base, the core fans, the fanboys, the fangirls, the fans, theys and thems, it's been bad, bro. It's been really bad. I saw one video on Twitter of a bunch of people ending up fighting in a cinema because they had different opinions on the film. There was also this very viral tweet that was circling around showing the Super Mario Brothers movie and the FNAF movie side by side, with the Mario movie being hated for having zero plot and the FNAF movie being hated for having too much plot. Now, like I said, the film is in cinemas, and I'm actually going to go and see it tonight with some friends, and maybe I'll do like a moist review. Maybe I'll steal another format from Critical and do some kind of like quick-fire review. But one thing that happens when films come out is usually they get leaked online because, you know, someone in the cinema will be holding their iPhone 2 and just filming the entire thing. And you know that perfect moment when you're watching a pirated film online and you can see people walk past the camera? It's it's a 10 out of 10 experience. But apparently, with the FNAF movie, because it was going to go straight onto video on demand as soon as it dropped in cinemas, the video on demand version got leaked. So now, circulating through many, many Discord servers is the entire rip of the Five Nights at Freddy's movie in like full 1080p, and it wasn't recorded on a camera. It is a complete scan of the film. Now, obviously, I would never watch a pirated film. That's very bad. You should never do that. So that's illegal. That's quite bad. But like I said, I'm going to see the film tonight, and then I'll give my opinions on it. Honestly, thinking about it, if I don't have a cameo in it, I'll probably have the same opinion as Jacksepticeye. You know what, to be fair, Shaggy from the Scooby-Doo films in it, so, you know, I'll probably just give it a 10.